Hello class, and welcome back to another lesson. So today we are going to answer a common question that is asked by many of my students, but also I believe just the general public or individuals who are focused on improving their public speaking skills. So the question of today is, what are 3 good speaking habits? So when I came up with this particular lesson, very difficult, I'm not going to lie, because there are a lot of good speaking habits. So I purposely only focused on 3 today, just to really help you focus on specific speaking habits that will help translate to not only public speaking, but in your everyday conversations with your friends, mentors, and everyone around you. So these are just 3 very common good speaking habits that I think will be effective for, again, for multiple communication situations. So let's dive into these good speaking habits. The first speaking habit is be conversational. Now, the greatest public speakers, again, this is just my opinion, the greatest public speakers, when they are on stage and they are delivering their speech, they sound like they're actually talking to you. They sound like they're your friend, your mentor, a coach, or someone who you can see yourself having a conversation with. Now, on the contrary, there are a lot of public speakers or just individuals, when they stand on stage or they're in front of a camera, they sound very robotic or they sound very rehearsed. Now, as an audience member, I'm sure that you've all seen presentations where speakers kind of, again, they sound like they're reciting lines. They don't sound like they're what I call, they don't sound human, they don't sound real. Now, one example that I think can be applied here are actors. Now, what separates great actors from mediocre actors? The great actors can take lines that they didn't even write, and they can make it sound real, and they can make it sound conversational. Now, the same thing can be applied to when you give your presentation. Now, for a lot of individuals, when they stand on stage, there's this immense pressure to sound perfect or to sound perfect. And as a result, when there's that pressure of trying to be perfect, they fall into this speaking pattern that sounds like your typical news reporter. You know, your traditional news reporter that you saw on TV back in the day, or still at the moment. I don't really watch news via TV anymore. But, you know, those traditional news reporters who are reading the teleprompter, they sound very robotic. Now, that's what you want to avoid. For that particular speaking situation, the news reporters, sure, that tone is to be expected, but you don't feel a sense of the personality, right, for the news reporter. Now, the case is different when you're giving public speeches, or when you're engaging in public speaking or presenting speeches, doing presentations, or having conversations with individuals. You want to sound like you want to sound like a real human being. Sure, in theory, it sounds very easy, but again, I'm assuming that if you've seen enough presentations, you'll notice the difference between different types of speakers. One type of speaker sounds very rehearsed. Everything's perfect, they're reciting the lines perfectly, it sounds like their delivery cues are perfectly executed, sure. But there are also other speakers who just kind of reach you to a different level. They reach you, they touch your heart, right? They make you feel like, wow, I want to listen to you more. I want to like almost be your friend. I want to sit down, have some coffee with you, and just pick your brain, have a conversation with you. Now, those are, in my opinion, the best public speakers. The ones who allow their personality to shine, who aren't too focused on perfection. Because again, from my experience, after observing thousands and thousands of speakers, what a lot of speakers tend to do when they try to be quote unquote perfect or execute perfectly is they tend to sound robotic. So even when you're practicing, you can definitely practice to sound more conversational. Again, the way that helps me kind of get into the conversational mode, I guess you can say, is I put myself in the position of an actor. I write out my speech, or I write out my lesson plan, whatever I have that I'm presenting, and I make it sound like myself. And in some cases, when I'm writing my speech, sure, on paper, it looks like a well-written presentation or a well-written speech. However, when I say it out loud, it doesn't feel like me, right? Because your writing style and your conversational style could be different. For myself, it definitely is. The way I write is a lot more formal because that's kind of the position I'm in. I write a lot of formal emails to my students, to my colleagues, etc. However, when I'm having conversations with my friends, the word choices that I use are completely different. Now, I try to bridge the gap between the two, between my actual presentation, the verbiage, as well as my conversational tone. So in order to do that is, again, I write down the speech, I read it out loud, and I have a sense of what sounds like me and if my speech is a good representation of my personality. Not necessarily focused on having the perfect speech, right? It's about maximizing my own ability as a speaker, maximizing my personality, because that's what makes me unique. Not the speech itself, because the speech, the topic that I wrote, has been, I'm sure, said several hundred thousand times, right? Because especially if I'm speaking on a very general topic. However, what makes a speech memorable and great, in my opinion, is when the speaker allows their personality to shine and the audience feels like that speaker is genuinely interested in what they're saying and they're genuinely focused on it, and they can see the speaker as, again, someone that they know, whether it's a mentor, coach, or student, whomever it may be. So you want to try to sound as conversational as possible, because when you also sound conversational, you alleviate a lot of pressure from the audience. The audience, they're just an audience. They want to be there. They want to sit there, be entertained, engage in some thought-provoking presentation. We all want to have a good time, right? Sure, it might be a serious situation, but by the end of the day, can you still make that serious situation very enjoyable? Okay, so that's the first tip. Be conversational. Allow your personality to shine. A lot of individuals I've noticed, they try too hard to aim for perfection. And once they achieve like the perfect practice, they end up sounding very robotic. However, if you can practice not sounding robotic, that would be great. But that's a completely different lesson. Okay, so this tip is very important. It can be applied to various communication situations. Okay, so moving forward, number 2, pausing. This is what great speakers do. They know exactly when to pause, but more importantly, they know that they should pause and that they should slow down. Now, think about it. What is a pause, right? And how long could it be? Now, the pause is pretty much it's silence. You're allowing silence to be in your presentation. Now, obviously, you should take pausing into account when you're presenting your speech. Now, the way that I see pauses is that it's important for you as a speaker to pause because, one, it allows you to breathe, obviously. And that's one thing I noticed with a lot of public speakers. They just rush through their entire speech out of maybe nervousness or excitement, or just because they're afraid of messing up, forgetting lines, so they try to rush through their entire presentation. They don't find moments to pause. So pausing is great for you as a speaker because it allows you to think about your speech. It allows you to slow down, be in the moment, and not be so worried about what to say the next line. Pausing is also very helpful if you are worried about forgetting the next line. Now, this is what I mean. Now, for presentations, I'm sure I can speak for everyone when I say that we've all done presentations where we're not exactly sure what to say next, right? Or maybe we forgot the upcoming paragraph or the upcoming main point. Now, obviously, this moment is very nerve-wracking. You're doing a great job for the first part of your speech, and while you're reciting your speech, you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I don't know what is coming up in my next presentation. I don't know what the next main point is, right? Now, this is what you can do, and this is what I do, and this is what I advise all of my students and clients to do. When you know you're about to forget a line or forget your main point, start slowing down and utilizing pauses. Because pauses, it allows your brain to think. It allows your brain to process information. And in that specific example, it will allow your brain to think of some way to recover from not knowing what main point is coming up next. Now, that's one way to do it, right? Now, another way, pausing is great for you as the speaker because it allows you to breathe, it allows you to think, it allows you to process information. Now, yes, that's great for the speaker. Now, why is pausing great for the audience? Because a lot of speakers, what I notice is that they tend to really just only focus on themselves. They only focus on, oh, how well am I doing? I hope I'm doing a great job, or I'm killing it, I'm doing great, my speech is being recited perfectly. But at the end of the day, speaking, or public speaking, it's about the audience. And it always has been. It's about the reaction. It's about how they will take and absorb the information you're saying. And by the end of your presentation, they'll take everything they got out of your presentation and they will judge you. Right? That's what audience members do. They sit, relax, they absorb whatever's in front of them, and by the end of that presentation, movie, whatever they're watching, they're going to have opinions, good or bad. Now, bringing this back to you and pausing. Pausing, it also allows your audience to absorb the information you're saying. Now, why is this important? Because I'm assuming if you spent a great deal of time invested in researching and writing and preparing your overall presentation, there's a lot of great gems and a lot of great information that is within your presentation because you did your due diligence. You have a lot of great statistics. You have a lot of great examples. Now, if you're rushing through your speech, all of your hard work, all of those research, the statistics, the examples, the stories that you tell, they'll be lost or they'll be missed by the audience because you didn't deliver it or you didn't execute that information in the best way. Now, communication is simple in theory and it's difficult in execution. Communication is all about a sender crafting a message and finding the best way to send that message to their audience. That's communication in a nutshell. It's how you get information from point A to point B. Now, that's a very simplified version. There's a lot more variables to communication, but just to simplify it for this particular tip. Pausing allows you as a speaker who prepared a message to have it effectively received by the receiver. Because again, it is about the receiver. It's about the audience. It's about how your message is interpreted. And by pausing, you allow moments in your presentation to not be, or you allow silence in your presentation so the audience can absorb the information you're saying. And pausing, it allows the audience to enjoy those specific key lines or key words that you chose to emphasize in your lines. It allows the audience to think. Now, for example, let's say you have this great line in the middle of your speech, and you really want that specific line to hit home and have the audience walk away with it. Now, what should you do? You should pause before that sentence, after the sentence, and probably some parts in between the sentence to switch up the pacing of your speech so that one singular line stands out more than the rest. Because think about your audience. They're not going to remember everything you say. But they will remember those key specific moments. They'll remember key ideas. Now, it is your job as a communicator to help the audience remember the specific lines that you want them to remember. And pausing helps that because it breaks up that information into small, bite-sized pieces that can easily be digestible. So utilize pauses. Utilize pauses. This is one thing that a lot of people don't do. Okay, moving forward, last tip is pacing. Now, it's just another word of saying, watch how quickly or how slowly you're speaking. Now, pacing is difficult to master because a lot of variables can affect your pacing. For example, timing, nerves, excitement, etc. Now, for me personally, one of my biggest issues that I have is I have a tendency to speak too fast because I don't know, I live in Los Angeles, so I have a tendency to feel rushed at a lot of times. But if I prepare like a presentation, I master and try to perfect the pacing, right? I slow down during the necessary moments when information is just takes a little bit more time to process, but I can speed up to kind of build that excitement, build that adrenaline, build the passion, have it executed on screen. Now, when it comes to pacing, there are a couple people that falls on opposite spectrums. First spectrum is that some individuals speak too slowly. They speak so slowly that it feels like a drag. Whereas on the opposite spectrum, some individuals speak too quickly. Therefore, a lot of information is being missed and we're forgetting a lot of things. Now, control when and where in your presentation you decide to slow down or to speed up and slow down. Both techniques are effective. You don't have to stick with one particular setting of your pacing. You don't have to just go slow all the time. You don't have to go medium all the time. You don't have to go fast all the time. You vary your pacing. You switch it up so there's excitement. So it all depends on the individual themselves. Now, understand your speaking style. And if you don't understand it, ask your friends, your colleagues, hey, when I'm doing presentations or when I'm talking, do I have a tendency to speak quickly, slowly, regularly? Now, it depends on the communication situation as well, because obviously when you're delivering speeches in a formal setting, your pacing can change. However, more often than not, my tip for most speakers is to slow down, control your nerves. Because one thing I've noticed is that when people get nervous, they tend to speed through whatever they're saying. Why? Because they want to leave this experience as quickly as possible. You're so nervous that you rush through your presentation because you want to get the presentation over with. Now, don't do this because if that's the case, the audience will feel like you wasted their time because you didn't learn to control your nerves. Again, I had a whole different lesson on nerves and how to control it. If you're interested in that, go check that out. But pacing is so important. Slow down, especially in the beginning, right? In your introduction, I would highly suggest you taking your time, ease into the presentation, control your pace, and then find moments where you can speed up a little bit, slow down, take pauses, but overall control how quickly you deliver your speech. Because again, at the end of the day, as a communicator, you have something to say, whether it's through email, text message, speeches, whatever it may be. You have something to say as a sender, and you're trying to tell it to someone who is the receiver. Now, it is your job to help the receiver of your message understand as clearly as possible what you're trying to say. Now, take these 3 tips and apply it. And you can apply it to your everyday life. It doesn't just have to be public speaking. but these are the 3 best delivery tips that I think will be especially helpful for you when you're giving presentations. Okay, so this is another lesson. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is prof.brianhy@gmail.com. It was fun, y'all. Take care.